Welcome back to Backstage Melody, where the biggest hits hide the deepest stories. What if one of the smoothest love songs of the 90s wasn't written in joy, but in desperation? When Lenny Kravitz released It Ain't Over Till It's Over, fans heard a soulful, timeless anthem. But behind the groove was something far more personal. A marriage falling apart, a man fighting for love, and one last musical plea to save everything he was losing. Today we pull back the curtain on the heartbreak behind the hit, and reveal how this classic song became Lenny Kravitz's most painful love letter. Lenny Kravitz wasn't supposed to meet Lisa Bonet, but sometimes fate doesn't follow the script. It was the mid-1980s, and both were standing at very different crossroads. Lenny was still an unknown artist, struggling to break free from the shadows of his famous parents, actress Roxie Roker and TV producer Sy Kravitz. In a world desperate to categorize him, Lenny felt trapped, too black for white audiences, too white for black radio. His sound didn't fit neatly into any label. His mixed-race identity made him feel like an outsider everywhere. The industry simply didn't know what to do with him. And then there was Lisa. Already a household name thanks to The Cosby Show, Lisa Bonet was America's free-spirited sweetheart. Her role as Denise Huxtable made her one of the most beloved young stars on television. But off-screen, she was nothing like the safe, clean-cut image the world expected. Lisa was drawn to poetry, art, mysticism, and had no interest in playing by Hollywood's rules. When the two met backstage at a New Edition concert in 1985, there was an instant spark. Not the kind of surface-level attraction that fades, but something deeper. Lenny would later say that meeting Lisa was like finding a mirror of his own soul. They were both old souls in young bodies, hungry for something real in an industry full of smoke and mirrors. Their connection moved fast. Within a year, they were inseparable. They didn't just fall in love, they created a world together. A world filled with incense, spiritual exploration, vintage records, and late-night conversations about life's bigger questions. Lisa became more than just Lenny's partner. She became his muse. She helped him embrace his identity fully, encouraging him to blend rock, funk, soul, and R&B into the unique sound that would eventually define his career. By 1987, they eloped in Las Vegas. No elaborate Hollywood wedding, just the two of them, far from flashing cameras. That same year, they welcomed their daughter, Sy Kravitz, into the world. On the outside, they looked like the ultimate bohemian dream couple, young, beautiful, and untouchably cool. But while their love burned hot, the world around them was cold, and cracks were already forming beneath the perfect surface. And soon, those cracks would threaten to break everything apart. At first, their love seemed unshakable, but slowly fame started whispering between them, turning something pure into something fragile. Lisa's star continued to rise with The Cosby Show, one of the most watched programs in America. But fame came with a price. Her schedule was relentless. Long filming days, constant media appearances, and very little time for anything else. She was working non-stop while Lenny stayed behind, trying to make his mark in an industry that didn't know what to do with him yet. While Lisa was building her acting legacy, Lenny was chasing record labels, producers, and studio sessions, desperately trying to craft his first album. That imbalance started to breed frustration. Not resentment for each other, but frustration with the world around them. Two artists, both burning with ambition, but moving at different speeds. And Hollywood wasn't kind. The spotlight magnified every tiny issue. The media began speculating. Was their marriage in trouble? Were they growing apart? Tabloids whispered about jealousy, about creative clashes, about distance turning into emotional isolation. Every rumor added fuel to an already growing fire. Lenny, meanwhile, struggled with his own insecurities. He was young, still developing his identity as both a man and an artist, and being constantly labeled as Lisa Bonet's husband only intensified his pressure to prove himself. In interviews years later, Lenny would admit that while their love was real, his own ambition sometimes made him distant and emotionally unavailable. Lisa wasn't immune to the strain either. Fame had boxed her in. She'd long been frustrated with being seen as just Denise Huxtable, yearning for roles and projects that challenged her. Creatively, that desire for artistic freedom led her to take bolder, more unconventional roles, including her controversial part in Angel Heart. which sparked public backlash and tension with the Cosby Show producers. That added another layer of stress to an already complex marriage. By early 1990, the separation wasn't sudden. It was the result of months of slow emotional erosion. They quietly drifted into living apart, trying to protect their daughter from the turmoil behind closed doors. But for Lenny, separation wasn't surrender. He still believed they had something worth saving, and that belief would drive him to write the most personal song of his life. When the silence in the house grew heavier and the distance between them felt like miles, Lenny turned to the one place where he could still speak freely: his music. Music had always been his therapy, but this time, it wasn't just about writing songs. It was about survival, about reaching across the emotional divide and trying to reconnect with Lisa in the only way he knew how. Lenny was drowning in heartbreak, but out of that pain came something honest, raw, and beautiful. He didn't want to write a bitter breakup anthem or lash out in anger. Instead, he wanted to remind Lisa and himself that their love was worth fighting for, that even with the mistakes, the hurt, and the distance, it wasn't too late. The words started pouring out of him. So many tears I've cried, so much pain inside, but baby, it ain't over till it's over. The song was pure vulnerability. A man laying his soul bare, not for the charts, but for the woman he still loved. It wasn't about blame, it was a desperate confession, a plea, a hope that somewhere in those lyrics, Lisa might hear his heart and reconsider. Sonically, the track was unlike anything dominating the charts at the time. While grunge, hip-hop, and pop were taking over the airwaves, Lenny reached backward, drawing inspiration from the soulful grooves of the 60s and 70s. Marvin Gaye, Curtis Mayfield, Earth, Wind and Fire. The warmth of real horns, smooth bass lines, and falsetto vocals gave the song its timeless retro feel. Ironically, Lenny was initially hesitant to release it. It felt too personal, too exposed. But his team recognized the magic. They saw the vulnerability as strength, something audiences would connect with on a deep level. When it finally made its way onto his second album, Mama Said, in 1991, even Lenny had no idea how much this one song, this love letter disguised as a soul record, would change everything. When It Ain't Over Till It's Over finally hit the airwaves in 1991, it was like nothing else on the radio. The moment people heard that smooth falsetto glide over the lush horns and vintage soul groove, they were hooked. In a music landscape dominated by grunge's angst, hip-hop's rise, and pop's polished formulas, Lenny's sound was a breath of fresh air. Or maybe a blast from the past that felt brand new. It was both nostalgic and timeless, instantly cutting across genres, races, and generations. Radio stations couldn't play it enough. The song climbed rapidly up the Billboard Hot 100, eventually peaking at number 2, becoming Lenny's biggest hit at the time. It dominated MTV, adult contemporary charts, R&B stations, and even found its way into international markets. People couldn't resist the melody, the groove, or that irresistible hook. But while millions were falling in love with the song, most had no idea what it was really about. For them, it was just a perfect love song. They heard romance. They heard hope. They didn't hear the quiet desperation buried inside the lyrics. And that's what made its success feel so bittersweet for Lenny. On stage, he smiled, performed, and soaked in the applause. His career was finally exploding. Record labels that once ignored him were now chasing him. Magazines called him one of music's brightest stars. Suddenly, he was no longer Lisa Bonet's husband. He was Lenny Kravitz, global hitmaker. But backstage, after the shows ended and the lights dimmed, the one person he wrote the song for remained distant. Lisa heard the song. How could she not? But by then, the wounds between them ran too deep. The irony cut like a knife. The song that brought him worldwide success couldn't save the love that inspired it. The marriage was still unraveling, slipping further and further out of reach, even as his name climbed higher on the charts. For Lenny, it was a cruel reminder that even the most beautiful music can't always rewrite real life. The success of It Ain't Over Till It's Over bought Lenny something rare: time. For a brief moment, there was still hope. Maybe the music would open a door. Maybe Lisa would hear not just the words, but the pain behind them. Maybe love would win. But real life isn't always as simple as a love song. By late 1991, their separation had turned into an emotional distance that even their deep bond couldn't bridge. The issues that once simmered quietly had now boiled over: trust, priorities, ambitions, all pulling them in opposite directions. They still cared for one another, but sometimes love isn't enough when wounds are left to fester. Lisa was continuing her own journey, both as a mother and as an artist. She was carving out her identity outside of the shadow of the Cosby Show, exploring independent films, taking risks, stepping into projects that reflected her true self. Hollywood didn't always understand her choices, but she was determined to grow beyond the box the industry had placed her in. Meanwhile, Lenny's career was moving at light speed. The success of Mama Saeed wasn't just a fluke, it was the breakthrough he had been chasing for years. His next albums would push him further into superstardom, but that rising fame came at a cost: more travel, more interviews, more public attention. The road that brought him success was pulling him even further away from the family life he once dreamed of. The emotional tug-of-war between love and independence was exhausting. Both of them realized that trying to force something back together might only cause more damage. And in 1993, the final chapter of their marriage quietly closed. The divorce was finalized. But unlike so many celebrity breakups that end in bitterness, Lenny and Lisa chose a different path. There were no ugly tabloid wars, no public accusations, no headlines filled with scandal. Instead, there was mutual respect, quiet heartbreak, and a shared commitment to protect the one thing that still bound them together: their daughter, Zoe. For Lenny, the pain was real. In later interviews, he admitted that the end of the marriage left him devastated. Lisa wasn't just a partner, she was his muse, his anchor, his home. Losing her forced him to confront himself in ways he never had before. But sometimes, heartbreak carves out space for growth, and for Lenny, that growth would fuel some of the most powerful music of his career. When the dust finally settled, something remarkable happened. Lenny and Lisa didn't become enemies. They became family in a different way. Their romantic relationship was over, but the love they shared didn't vanish. It simply transformed. At the center of that transformation was their daughter, Sy Kravitz. Both Lenny and Lisa were fiercely committed to raising her in a healthy, grounded environment, one free of the typical chaos that surrounds celebrity breakups. For years, Zoe would split her time between her parents, growing up in a world filled with creativity, artistry, and unconditional love. In interviews, she's spoken about how her parents handled the divorce with grace, shielding her from the darker emotions while allowing her to see that love doesn't have to disappear when relationships end. Lenny and Lisa remained close friends, attending events together, spending holidays as a family, and openly supporting one another's careers. Their bond evolved into something even stronger: mutual respect. They recognized each other's strengths and gave each other the space to heal and grow. But the story didn't end there. In 2005, Lisa found love again, this time with actor Jason Momoa. The world watched with surprise as Lenny and Jason not only accepted each other, but became genuine friends. There was no jealousy, no awkward tension, just mutual brotherhood. Lenny has even referred to Jason as family in interviews, calling him his brother and praising his love for Lisa and Zoe. This modern blended family dynamic became something rare in Hollywood, a true example of emotional maturity. Fans admired how they navigated heartbreak, healing, and new beginnings with grace. Through it all, "It Ain't Over Till It's Over" remained a quiet thread running beneath their story, a reminder of what was lost, but also of the deep love that once existed. Even as life moved on, that song remained a frozen moment in time, capturing both the beauty and pain of their shared history. Legacy of the song. Decades have passed since "It Ain't Over Till It's Over" first poured out of Lenny Kravitz's broken heart, but its impact has never faded. For many artists, hits come and go, but for Lenny, this song became something far more personal. Every time he steps onto a stage and sings those lyrics, it's like revisiting an old photograph, one filled with love, pain, growth, and bittersweet gratitude. Over the years, the song has taken on a life of its own. What started as a deeply private plea to Lisa Bonet has become a timeless anthem that continues to resonate with generations of listeners. It's been covered, sampled, and played at weddings, breakups, and reunions alike. Its message of hope, that love can survive even through struggle, still strikes a nerve, even for people who've never heard the backstory. For Lenny, performing it live isn't just a trip down memory lane. It's a living reminder of how far he's come. In interviews, he's shared how that heartbreak shaped him, not just as a musician, but as a man. The pain that once felt unbearable ultimately gave him clarity, forcing him to face his own weaknesses, grow emotionally, and channel everything into his art. Critics often point to "It Ain't Over Till It's Over" as one of the key moments where Lenny truly found his voice, blending vintage soul with rock, pop, and funk in a way that broke genre barriers. It helped establish the signature sound that would carry him through decades of music that followed. Without this song, there may not have been "Are You Gonna Go My Way, Fly Away," or many of the other hits that made him a global icon. But perhaps the most powerful legacy isn't about charts or sales. It's about honesty. The raw vulnerability in "It Ain't Over" remains rare in mainstream music. A man publicly exposing his heartbreak without ego or blame. That honesty is what makes it timeless. Sometimes the most beautiful songs come from the darkest corners of love. "It Ain't Over Till It's Over" wasn't just a hit. It was a love letter, a confession, and a goodbye, all wrapped in one. And maybe that's why it still resonates, because behind every smooth melody, there's often a broken heart that refuses to give up, even when it knew the end had already come. If you love discovering the real stories behind the music, make sure to subscribe. There's plenty more heartbreak, legend, and mystery coming your way. Until next time, stay curious.